Hello, I'm Dr. Stephanie Mines, and I'm here right now to talk to you about a remarkable young woman named Sophie Shorma, who lives with a neurological disorder known as Rett syndrome. And what I'd like to do is what Sophie's mom, who's given me complete permission to share Sophie's story with you, calls Sharing Our Sophie. And Sophie is remarkable in the incredible developmental progress she has made despite this neurological condition for which the prognosis is frequently not too optimistic. And mainly what I want to share with you is Sophie, who she is, and how she has communicated to me what is possible for girls living with Rett syndrome. And I also want to communicate to you the interventions that I've used with her that have supported her in becoming who she really is. So Sophie inspired me to write my book, New Frontiers in Sensory Integration. When I first started working with Sophie, she was a child. She was 8 or 9 years old. Now she is a young woman, 15 years old, and going to high school and having many of the typical experiences that a high school girl would have in social interaction, in her learning process. And I want to tell you how that happened, how that evolved. It's been an incredible journey for all of us. So the interventions that I introduced into Sophie's life that didn't exist previously were an incredible, simple, and user-friendly applied touch system called Jinshin Tara that evolved out of my studies with a woman named Mary Eno Burmeister, who I studied with for over 20 years, who imparted this bioelectrical, meridian-based system to me, and which I have adapted for many very specific purposes, including the treatment of sensory integration. Treatment of trauma was my major thrust for a long time before I became introduced to the needs of the pediatric sensory integration community. So that is one of the major interventions that I have introduced into Sophie's life, into her family life, and that her mother continues to use in her own advocacy and in her own practices with Sophie. The other interventions are very gentle cranial treatment that Sophie's mom can also replicate at home. And then I think one of the most stunning and very simple interventions is what I call limbic stimulation. So limbic stimulation is really a way of interacting with children and youth with sensory integration needs that acknowledges their potential, acknowledges their intelligence, acknowledges who they are, despite or through, you might say, whatever diagnosis they're carrying. So as I began working with Sophie from the very beginning, I felt that I was interacting with a fully present, fully cognizant human being. Even though she was nonverbal, even though she has the typical behaviors of a girl with Rett syndrome, which is dominated by obsessive hand clapping or hand wringing, in which one hand, in Sophie's case, is pushed into the other hand. And that behavior interrupts her capacity to focus. It also has interrupted the application of the meridian-based touch therapy that I use. And because of that, what I began to do was twofold. One, I began to dialogue with Sophie about the fact that it was very difficult for me to apply this system, especially the diagnostic aspects of it, which require pulse listening on the wrists. It was very difficult for me to apply that diagnostic process if she was doing the hand clapping, and would she mind ceasing the hand clapping in order for me to engage in this therapy. And 9 times out of 10, she does that. That is an agreed upon strategy that she and I are congruent with that allows me to proceed with the applications, and that she accepts because she and I are in agreement about it. The other thing that I've done that allows me to treat Sophie more effectively is that I ask her to co-participate with me in treatment. So this hands-on component involves holding certain sites on the body. So I invite her to hold some of these sites herself, and she does. She has become a co-participant in this system. And one of the most stunning examples of that co-participation involved time that her mother was spending with her using some cards that I had created that illustrate the sites and indicate them. So Sophie's mom, because she is so proactive in terms of inviting Sophie's volition in all of her life experiences, she invited Sophie to select from these cards the sites that she wanted her mother to hold for her. When Sophie's mom applied these sites, Sophie ceased the hand clapping. It was really a wonderful thing for me to see. Her mom sent me the photographs of it. I wasn't even present for that experience, which demonstrates Sophie's co-participation, the power of parental follow-through, and the stunning communicative possibilities that are available when you actively engage someone with as severe a neurological disorder as Rett syndrome. Sophie fully participated, and the interventions that she selected were successful in interrupting the hand clapping, which is the obsessive behavior of Rett syndrome. Now, needless to say, the hand clapping didn't cease permanently. It did cease for a period of time, and we have to assume, even though this is not a clinical trial, we have to assume that there's some correlation between the interventions, between the fact that Sophie is engaged with her mother in this very contactful way, and the cessation of the hand clapping. What also happens with that treatment is a significant reduction in the sclerotic or highly rigidified tension that Sophie and all girls with Rett syndrome tend to carry. So there's a softening of connective tissue, a softening of the musculature throughout the body, but in the areas where that tension tends to be the most severe, such as in the jaw, such as in the feet, we see a definite softening of tissue. The hands, for instance, become very relaxed, very soft, and very open, and it is not unusual during those treatment sequences for Sophie's hands to be completely quiet for as much as 15 minutes. So the cranial treatment that I also include with Sophie is very gentle. It's cranial treatment that is completely safe. It basically involves a softening of the cranial structures. There's nothing invasive in the treatment. It's very easy to learn, and it is documented, as is the applied touch aspect, in my forthcoming book and in other materials that are available from my program, The Tara Approach.